What's up, gamers? Welcome to the HitPoint second episode of Gaming Book Club. I am Donnie K, and I'm joined by the wonderful Brandon. What's up, Brandon?
Dude, not much. I think we're here to talk about Moonlighter, and just kind of as per usual, there will be spoilers here. So if you have not played Moonlighter, stop what you're doing, go play Moonlighter, come back to us. Or if you don't care, just stay with us. But we're going to spoil stuff, probably.
So Moonlighter is a roguelike dungeon crawler. Road, it's like a road. You ride through the game.
Built by the Romans, this game.
Built by the Romans thousands of years ago, Moonlighter. Where a dungeon crawling game where the dungeons are procedurally generated every time, or not procedurally, that's wrong, but they're randomly generated every time you enter them, and they change every time. But there's a twist in Moonlighter. You take these items that you find in the dungeons during the night, and during the day you are Will, the shopkeeper. You go home and you sell these items that you find. Quite a fun little mechanic. What did we think of Moonlighter, Brandon?
All right, so Moonlighter, I don't know about you, Donnie. I put maybe 10 hours into the game, something like that. But I'm not very far. This is one of those games where if you're a slow player like me, you're probably gonna put a good 50, 60 hours into this game before you actually like beat the final boss or whatever, is at the end of the fifth gate. In the game there are 5 dungeons, right? And how it works is there 4? I thought there was 4 and they opened the 5th.
The 5th one is, I was looking through the achievements the other day, and the 5th one says, the 5th one just says, find out what's behind the mysterious door. So I'm doubting that it's a dungeon. But anyways, 4 dungeons and a 5th door.
4 dungeons and a 5th something. Basically, the first dungeon is the only one you have access to. You have to work your way through it. When you beat the boss, that unlocks the next one. And then, that one unlocks the next one. And that one unlocks the next one. And then you get to see what's behind. You get to see the man behind the curtain, behind door number 5, right? In my 10 hours of play, I have barely moved on to the second dungeon. And I probably would still be on the first dungeon were it not for you informing me that you can enchant your gear.
So Brandon and I have the same amount. What did you say? You have about 10 hours?
Yeah, I've probably got about 10 hours in the game.
I have 9, and I am significantly further than Brandon. I beat the 3rd dungeon last night, and I gave up before starting the 4th dungeon.
Jesus.
So one of us was paying attention to what mechanics there are available for you to upgrade, and one of us was not.
Hey, I was upgrading my shit. I just wasn't enchanting it.
So that was kind of one problem I had with the game, is that it seemed like each dungeon has a level of gear that you can get to with the items from that dungeon, because upgrading your gear requires certain items, and certain items won't be available until the next dungeon. So there's a cap on your gear for that one dungeon, right? And more or less until you get to that cap, you can't beat the dungeon. So it was always grind until you have enough money to buy all the upgraded stuff, grind until you have enough money to enchant it, then you can beat the dungeon. And it's like night and day difference. Like the enchantments make so much difference that where you'll struggle on the 2nd floor, die immediately on the 3rd floor, enchant your gear, make it to the boss right away, and win easily. It got kind of repetitive. I mean, the difference in the dungeons kind of kept me coming back for a few hours, but it got kind of by the 3rd dungeon, I was kind of like, okay, like, you upgrade your gear the most you can from that dungeon, you enchant your gear the most you can from that dungeon, and then you easily beat the boss. At least that was my experience. What did you find?
So because I didn't realize that enchanting was a thing, I was trying to play through that first dungeon with just like the leveled up armor. I'd get to floor 3, and by floor 3 I'd be in trouble. But what I will say is I think that you could beat this game without that if you were a highly skilled player.
Like, well, there's people out there who are doing it without armor, without upgrading their weapons, without enchantments. There's definitely some crazy people out there like that.
There's some speedrunner who's beat the game in like 6 minutes or something, right?
Without any upgrades, yeah.
But no, I think that 90% of players are going to go through the same loop that we did.
You kind of further proved my point there, where I was saying you didn't know about the enchantments and you're having a hard time, But
Right.
now that you do know about the enchantments, you're more or less beating the dungeon easy, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm like, man, I'm struggling. I cannot get to the fourth floor where the boss is on the first dungeon, the Golem dungeon. And he's like, well, have you upgraded your gear? I'm like, yeah. He's like, have you enchanted it? I was like, whoa, what? And, the basically it was a little bit of a grind to get the required materials to enchant them because I'd just been selling those materials up until this point because I didn't know what to do with them. But once I had my gear enchanted, it was like super easy to not only get to the boss but beat him. Like I fought the boss twice. The first time I really struggled to get to him and I didn't actually realize I was like going into the final boss fight. So I like got in there, used my nope pendant to nope my way out of there. And then you told me about the enchantments. I enchanted my shit and I went in there and kicked his ass, no problem. So
Yeah, so
um,
that's like one of the things. I like that. So when you die in the dungeon, you lose all your gear. However, if you think you're about to die or your inventory is just full, whatever, you can pay a scale of amount of dollars. It starts really low, but it goes up with the dungeons and how high you are on the floors and whatever. But you can pay a certain amount of money to just be whoop, get out of there,
just
teleported back to
nope
town.
right out of there.
Yeah, your nope pendant, as Brand called it a second. So that's good. And then later on, you gain access to what do they call it?
Are you talking about the mirror or the portal?
The portal. You can
Uh,
pay a significant amount more than the pendant. However, you can teleport right back to where you leave from at a
yes.
later time.
So I think that's an important thing that we kind of skipped over is the dungeons, like you said, they kind of not really procedurally generated, but kind of procedurally generated with like a certain tile set, right?
Well, they're random, but not
Um,
really random.
it randomizes every time you go in, and every time you leave, if you just leave via your pendant or death, uh, when you go back, you have to start from ground zero again. You have to start
Yeah,
from floor
floor
one.
one.
Yeah. Whereas if you use this portal, you get to go back. So it's kind of a way to like save your progress in a really expensive way. Um,
Well, I would always do it when I knew I was very close to the final boss. I would go empty my inventory at home and then go back and fight the boss with a couple more potions and shit.
yeah, I don't know. It's a cool feature. I kind of wish there was a checkpoint, like just a regular checkpoint system in there. I wish there was a way to like maybe not every floor, but like every other floor be like, man, you know what? I'm just gonna skip to that floor. Like at a certain
Yeah.
point in the game, you've established that you can kick the first mini boss's ass, right? Like like he's not hard. Like you can beat him with no upgrades if you're
Yeah.
feeling a little frisky. But I don't know. One thing I will say about the gear is, in my opinion, it's kind of a double-edged sword because, for one, every time you upgrade your gear, it feels like a substantial upgrade, right? Like it
Mhm.
feels like a good upgrade. But because there's so little to choose from, there's not a whole lot of different builds you can try, and in any of
Oh
these
yeah.
little RPGs, there's different builds, and this one there's really not. Even with the different weapons, your your play style is more or less the same. It's a whole lot of dodge rolling and then poking a bad guy with a whatever
Yeah, so
pointy
the
thing you
dodge
have.
roll is like OP. The
Oh
dodge
yeah.
roll, you can not even be done the animation or whatever and still dodge anything. Or like if a boss is invisible searching for you, you just dodge roll a bunch and he won't hit you. And
I was watching this review, and granted, it was a very early review of the game. And the guy was talking about how you have to be really skillful with your dodge roll. It's got iframes, invincibility frames in it, but you got to be really skillful when you use it. Otherwise, you're gonna get murdered. And that was not my experience at all. You could
yeah,
just
it's not
spam
like
that
that
thing,
anymore.
and you
No.
were invincible. You were a god until you stopped rolling. So
Yeah, if you like run into enemies, it's not as good, but still, as long as you're running away from the enemies, it's not bad. So another thing that tries to mix up the gameplay, I quite liked every weapon. So what is there? There's the sword and shield. That's
there's
one
the
of them.
sword and
Then
shield,
there's
the
the
big
big
sword,
sword.
the bow.
There's the bow, the spear, and the gloves. I was using the gloves. They're so good. So I guess that kind of mixes it up. So like what range you would fight at, because the big sword and the spear, you'd kind of like a longer range. The bow was obviously like actually long range, and then the sword and the gloves, I would say, were pretty close range. Hey, well, everything had like a secondary ability, like a second, like the sword and shield you could block, the spear you like charge with your spear, the gloves you like charge up a really good punch. But I thought that was interesting. Every weapon having a secondary kind of function. That was always good for me, at least. A really
It's
powerful attack. It was useful. The glove's secondary attack, like the charge punch, was really good for like enemies that take two hits because it'll give them both hits in like one go kind of thing.
right. I agree with you. It made it nice and it gave each weapon a little bit of like, it gave it, its situation. Like each weapon had a
Right.
situation where it was like better than the other. But like
Yeah.
none of them, like you could do it with any of them just fine. Like
Yeah.
you could pick one, stick with that one the entire game, and you would
Yep.
be just fine as long as it was adequately leveled.
But it was
And
more or less like a preference thing. Like I didn't like the combat for the first little bit, but then I tried the glove and I was like, holy shit, this is fun. You just get up close and you're just punching shit.
one of my bigger problems was because you've only got those options, and because you've basically just got your light attack and then your secondary, whether that's a heavy attack or with sword and shield, it's a block. Like outside of that, there, as far as I can tell, there's no real combos built into the game.
No.
There's not a whole lot of depth to the combat. There's not a
The
whole lot of
combat
depth
isn't
to the
very deep.
gear.
It's
Um,
it's fun for a little while, and I think because I'm most of the way through the game and I'm only 9 hours in, so I think 10, 11 hours is a good stay. You know what I mean? Like I'm not bored of the combat yet, but I could see if this was a 30, 40 hour game, it would definitely get pretty dang old.
and if you're a slow player like me, where that's what it's looking like I can tell you already, the combat's getting samey. I've been switching up weapons to like try and make it feel a little different, but it's getting real samey real quick. It doesn't matter what I'm using. So
We have the same amount of gameplay. But you
right.
you just cleared the first dungeon.
Well, I think that almost makes it worse because I've been fighting the same enemies for 10 hours where you're 3 dungeons worth of enemies you've been dealing with,
Yeah,
but
the enemy switch
that's
up is pretty good. They keep it interesting with like the different enemies. You have to learn how to fight them after
right.
a while. And then I like those rooms. There's always a room that can happen in a dungeon. So say you're in the first dungeon and there'll be a room with enemies and gear from the second dungeon. It gives you a little preview of what's next to come. I always like those little rooms. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was kind of a cool mechanic. The other one that was kind of cool was the secret treasure rooms that you pointed out to me, where like if you
Yep.
notice, was it a question mark on the map? I really didn't
Question
pay
mark
much
on the
attention to
map,
the mini map.
and also you would see in the abyss, you would see little sparkles tell you to like fall down into them. But yeah, there'll always be a question mark on the map too, which is a dead giveaway.
Right.
But what are they, Brandon? Please tell me.
So they're more or less just little treasure rooms. Some of them you fall down, there's just some broken crates with some fancy loot on the ground. Others you go down there and there'll be like a book on a pedestal. Sometimes you'll drop down there and it'll be a trap. There'll be a chest and like this pillar, and when you activate the pillar, a bunch of portals open and a bunch of enemies pour out, and then when you beat said enemies, you can loot the chest.
The chest
Um,
generally has like really good stuff in it, though.
Really, all of them were like anytime you fell down one of those, you were like, I'm getting something slightly better than whatever, the normal mobs are dropping up
Right.
above. As far as the actual dungeon crawling goes, there's like these wells that you can heal at. They seem to appear like a room or two before
Yeah, well, it's
the
even mentioned in the game. There's like these little I guess other people are also exploring the dungeons or like before have explored the dungeons before, and they leave little like little diaries behind. They kind of give you hints, and those diaries specifically say that those healing fountains are always on the way to the boss room. So
they're kind of nice. You can't use them indefinitely. I think it gives you about 100 hit points worth of health that you can,
well, yeah, the
go back
later
to. But
dungeons heal way more, but
do they?
yes.
But so those are kind of cool. They're a neat little thing, and they're kind of a good way to be like, "Hey, boss up ahead." It's a good little bit of a warning system, so you don't go in unprepared. But really, there's not a whole lot to the combat. There's not a whole lot to the dungeon crawling, which in my opinion is the most appealing part of this game. When you're picking up items, I guess we can touch on the inventory system real quick. Like you were saying, when you die, you lose all the items in your bag. You keep the stuff that's on your person. It's like five items in the top slot of your inventory.
Yeah, and then 20 in the bottom.
But then there's this mechanic in the game where some items that you pick up are cursed. Is that the word? And they'll have modifiers on them. So like some of them you'll have to place in a specific location in your bag, like the top of the bag, the bottom of the bag, the sides of the bag. Some of them, they have a curse that will lift the curse of an item in a given direction from the item where you place it in your bag. I hope I'm explaining that in a way that makes sense.
Yep.
Some of them will like destroy an item in that direction. Some of them, like,
it doesn't
if the
destroy
item takes
it
too many
immediately,
hits,
though.
it destroys it when you leave the dungeon, right?
Yeah, but just put it so it's not pointing at anything, and you've completely negated that.
But what I was going to touch on with this is, Donnie, I think you said you kind of liked it. I absolutely hated this mechanic because, like, I don't know about you, but when I'm playing an RPG, my least favorite thing is inventory management. We've already got limited slots. We're already trying to min-max the shit out of our items. And then all of a sudden you've got this inventory system where, like, I'm having to shuffle my shit around all over the place.
But it takes 2 seconds, and usually the automatic mover just fixes it for you.
I had mixed results with the automatic mover, but it feels unnecessary. It felt like something that was in there to like give you a little bit more to do, but it's like in a part of the game that I don't want to do more.
Yeah,
right?
I feel
Like
that.
where I'd rather have like some attack combos or something like that. Instead
You
we've
got to
got
manage your inventory.
exactly. And I guess while we're on the inventory, there is an item that you get pretty early on in the game. It's this mirror that you can like throw items through, a portal mirror. I don't know. That you can basically sell off junk items while you're still in the dungeon for like a very reduced
Small, yeah.
price. So like an item that's worth like 100, you'll get like 10 gold for.
Yeah, something like that.
But I mean, it's a good way to get rid of junk items, and that helps with your inventory bit because you do have limited space. And like we said, you have to start at the very first floor of the dungeon every single time, unless you paid the portal price.
Yeah,
But yeah,
so more or less, I don't remember where I was going with that. Never mind.
but yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the inventory management minigame. I would have much preferred to see some more interesting combat mechanics or something along those lines, more gear, I don't know, something.
And
But
then
we've
you
only
go
talked
home.
about half the game.
Yeah.
Yep. Donnie, take it away. Tell us about what you do when you're at home. Little Will, you take him home after a hard night in the dungeons, and what's that about?
You wake up, and it's time to run your shop. So you go home. You have to guess prices, and customers will give you reactions. Either like they'll give you like money eyes, like that means it's way too low. You're selling it way too low, and they're like, "Oh, of course I got to buy this. It's priced way too low. That's a steal." Or they'll be angry because you priced it too high. You know what I mean? Or they'll
Right.
make the happy face, and that means you priced it perfect. So what I would do is I would always adjust it. I would always shoot for way too high and then bring it down until I found the right price. But then once you have, a good amount of things from one dungeon sorted, you could put everything in your chest, sort things by price, and be like, okay, this is worth 100, this is worth 50, and the item that I don't know is worth somewhere in between.
Right.
And I enjoyed that at first. However, I did eventually, I kind of got bored of trying to uh, figure out what the prices were for everything. Like I thought it was too much. Like there's no indication, right? Because the jump between dungeons is huge. Like you go from selling things for like 100, the really expensive things maybe 1,000. Like that's crazy though. And
Well,
then the
so
next dungeon, you start selling things for like 1,000, and then there's things for like 5,000 all of a sudden, and there's no indication that you should make that jump. So I did end up just opening a guide and having a guide open on my second monitor here the whole time I was playing for what to sell things for, so I could get the best price.
right. And like even just in that first dungeon, you've got stuff that sells for like 4 gold versus stuff that sells for like 3 grand.
Yeah,
And
well,
like
2,750 is the top end of the first dungeon, but yeah, like and there's
that's
no
a hell of a
indication.
range.
Yeah, there's no indication of what the price range. Like you can tell like, oh, like there's only one of this thing. Obviously it's kind of rare, but still like there's no like sell this for $3,000. Like you
Right.
don't know. Later on in the game, there's a bit of a hack, I guess I somebody told me on Reddit. You can, you know, that guy who sells things from the dungeons in case you don't want to, like really rare things you don't want to go find yourself, so he just sells them for you.
Right. Right.
I only ended up using him once. He's called Le Retailer, but he sells things from the dungeons. He takes the price of what you should sell them for and he times it by 4.5, I think. So people are saying like if you don't want to cheat with a guide like I did, you just take his prices and divide it by whatever, and that's your ideal price.
I don't
But
know that that's any different than
yeah,
like because you had to get that piece of information, and you I don't know. That's basically you're basically peeking at a guide at that point, right?
well, I'm just saying, like, that's in the game though. Like, if you didn't look that up and you just knew, because there's something that says he like entrenches it, but if you found out, it's not that hard. I mean, just be like, oh, I
Most
sell this for 5, he sells it for 20, that's 4x. Like,
right.
easily, you could just be like, okay, he sells it for 4,000. I obviously got to sell it for 1,000. So that is actually in the game.
I
But
feel like
I
most people are going to
that's not how
stumble
I
upon
did
that
it.
information elsewhere.
Yeah, I did it in a guide. So
Yeah.
another good thing to do with your money. So obviously you buy your gear and you upgrade your gear and everything, but you can upgrade lots of things.
Yeah.
There's 5 different shops you can get in the town. There's the armor guy, who's like the first one you got to buy because what do you do without your armor upgrades? Then there's the potion and enchanter girl. Then you get the retailer who just sells you things that you could just get from the dungeon yourself at exorbitant prices. I only used him once. Have you found use for him at all?
I used him once
Yeah, I
to
just
upgrade a weapon, and that was it because I was like, I don't want to find that right now.
same. So I did like 6 runs looking for one enemy, the mimics, the treasure chest mimics that you love so much.
Oh my god, I hate those fuckers.
Apparently, according to Google, they should appear once every 4 runs, but I did like 6 or 7 runs and didn't see one. So I just gave up on, and I paid him like $9,000 for a single item. I need to upgrade my gear. But anyways, so the retailer, and then there's a guy who sells decorations for your shop, which give you little upgrades like people will tip more, or you can stay open later, or more people can be in your shop, or it detracts thieves, like sends thieves away more often. So, and then the last guy is a banker. Actually, you haven't unlocked the banker yet, have you?
No, I haven't unlocked the banker or the hawker.
Yeah, so it's almost like a stock market. You give him X amount of dollars, and then he'll invest it for you, and it goes up and down throughout the week. And if you forget to take it out by the end of the week, actually, you lose all your money. But so it'll be up certain percent one day and down a certain percent the other day. It's not super involved. It'll just like you just go talk to him. It's like, oh, the market's up 28% today, and then you can take out your money, or it's like, oh, it's down 15% today, and you obviously wouldn't want to take out your money at that point. But if it's the last day, you're kind of screwed there. That was more or less it. And then you can spend money on upgrades to your own house. You got your cash register, which makes people tip more. You got your bed, which gives you more defense and health, more shelf space, and then more decoration space. Those decorations I mentioned earlier, which give you more tips and less criminals and stuff. And then eventually you'll get a shop assistant, and she can chase those criminals for you. So you can have like these glass enclosures, which make things more pristine. And I think you can sell them for a little bit more, and thieves can't touch them if they're behind glass. So what did you think about the shop upgrades?
So, just the shop experience in general, uh, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when a minute ago you were talking about like the town upgrades and how the stock market and how that particular mini game isn't super involved. I feel
Yeah.
like that is the name of the game until you get to the shop, at which point it becomes super involved, almost to the point where it's like too much, you know? So you're trying to guess prices, you're trying to make it so people aren't waiting at your register, you're trying to catch thieves, you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off in the shop
Right.
minigame. And I don't know, I wasn't a huge fan of it. It was kind of cool when you'd like nail down a price for a real expensive item that you'd been getting burned on previously.
Yeah, I didn't love the shop either. I kind of started to enjoy it a little more when I had the guide up, because then you're just selling stuff and
Right.
it's quick and easy. But yeah, I enjoyed guessing the prices at first, but I think we're pretty right about how like the entire game, nothing's very deep. Like there's a lot of things to the game, but nothing's very deep about
And
it, you know?
the stuff that has more depth than you'd expect is the stuff that you don't necessarily want to have the depth, you know? The in the shop, supposedly you can like crash the market if you sell too much of a single item, but like I didn't ever sell enough to crash the market. Did you?
I think you only crash the market when you sell something too low. The demand will go up and down when you sell something too low or too high. And
So as long as you're in the sweet spot,
yeah,
it
that was my experience because I was using a guide. So obviously I was never selling anything too low or too high. So to me, the market never went up or down.
I didn't notice any fluctuation. It was like I can fill my entire shelf space with this one item, and everybody's happy to keep paying that same price day after day after day.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of an interesting take on like the dungeon crawler though, because usually you only have the dungeon crawler elements. Excuse me,
right,
the roguelite dungeon crawler elements, and you'll take that stuff and use it for upgrades, but you never have anything to do with it outside of upgrades. You know what I mean?
right.
So having a shop was kind of interesting to me, at least.
It just feels like it's taken inspiration from a couple different games to kind of like mix it into this, create a new game in the roguelite dungeon crawling genre that, it's different, but it's not particularly deep in any respect.
Right. Well, a big
It's
part of the
taken
Zelda dungeon crawling is the puzzles, right? And there's no
right.
no puzzles in these dungeons. There's nothing terribly interesting to do other than fight things, which gets kind of monotonous in hour 10.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fun game for a couple hours. I think that if you played it in small doses over the course of a couple weeks, it'd be a better experience than if you just sat down and ground away for hours and hours and hours. The game kind of suffers from like the civilization one more turn thing, right? You'll get back from a dungeon, you'll be selling your stuff, and you'll be like, I can do one more run. And I think honestly, the game would be better played if you didn't do that to yourself. If you sat down and you played for an hour or two one night, and then you moved on, you did other things, came back to it in a couple days, give it another couple hours. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sonny?
I think it was a fun, cute little. I'm pretty sure it's indie, right? Developed by a pretty small team,
Yeah,
independently published and everything. So I liked the art style. The music was good. I liked how the music got more intense the lower you got in every dungeon. Like there was kind of a theme for the dungeon, but then it got more and more intense. And then the boss music was always really cool to me, at least. So I'd say it's worth giving a shot. I liked Moonlighter. I liked my time in Moonlighter. I'm more or less done with it. I might go back soon to find out what's behind that fifth door, but I also won't lose any sleep if I don't go back and find out what's behind that fifth door.
right. I think that's a good summation of it. Especially if you can catch it on sale, or if you like us got it in the humble bundle, it's definitely worth playing. But it's a fun game. It's got some character to it, and like you said, the music's good. It gets a little bit old when you're 10 hours into the same dungeon, but but
When
the
you're bad.
music's good. Hey, yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I'd say give it a go. Play the game.
A rating? If you had to give it a rating.
If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a, and this is going to sound super harsh, but I'm one of those people where like you've got people who you give something a B and people are like, that's terrible. It's not terrible. That's a
A
B. That's
B.
above average.
C's get degrees, dude.
Exactly. So I'd say I'd probably give it a 6.5, 7 out of 10.
There you go. I'm giving it 3.5 cashews out of 5.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I don't know that we've established what we're playing in the next book club yet. I think we're probably going to skip next week because Donnie's going to LTX. I'm going on a fishing trip.
Boom.
But we'll be back. Will the following week be the next Humble review?
Already?
I
Yeah.
think so. I
The
think we're
week
already-
after. So we're going to take a week off. The next week will be the humble review, but we'll try to get a podcast up next week. How about it?
Yeah, we'll get a podcast up. And also, I'm not going to promise it's going to be up, but I've been working on some scripts for some other content. Some of that might sneak in. But
So,
yeah, no book club next week. But
as always, thank you for watching. If you're listening to this, I love you. I love you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening to us ramble for however long this video ends up being, and we'll see you next time.